wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Leah Follett. Welcome to A Quirky Journey. Join us as we share our family's journeys to good health. You'll find plenty of inspiration, tips and recipe ideas, as well as stories from everyday people who've struggled and overcome health problems and diet challenges in their own families. I'm Jo Whitten, author of the blog and book Quirky Cooking, and today I have with me another GAPS mum, a much more experienced and very amazing GAPS mum, Nicole as a party. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Jo. Thanks for having me along.
Oh, I'm really excited about hearing your whole story. Nicole is the author of the Alchemy Cookbook, which is a GAPS cookbook which has the most gorgeous photos and very good recipes too. I've been drooling over it, having a look.
Great.
Yeah, I'm dying to try some.
Lovely.
And I've asked Nicole to come and chat about her story and how this way of eating's helped her family, and also about the amazing recipes in her book, because I know with a lot of GAPS mums, we get very stuck in a rut, don't we?
Absolutely. And it's, God, what do I cook next situation.
I mean, you don't want to live on chicken and pumpkin soup for your whole life. So.
No, absolutely. And you don't have to. This is the thing about GAPS, isn't it? It can be overwhelming to start with, but you know, when looking through the GAPS book and seeing some of the recipes at the back, I did start to recognise some of the things that, you know, looked very familiar in my own family's repertoire. Like, for example, the chicken soup with the lemon. It's something my grandmother always used to make.
I love chicken soup with lemon.
Yeah, it's delicious. And my grandmother, Grandma Claire, used to make us avgolemono, which is a Greek version of this soup.
Yeah.
And basically, so I started looking at it and thinking, oh my God, a lot of this is just European
traditional foods.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just had to think back to all of my favourites when I was young.
Yep.
The things that my grandmother's made for me and my great-grandmother made for me. And I started to collect some of those recipes, try them out at home, and to my delight and relief, I found that the kids, you know, the whole family was happy with them.
Oh, that's awesome. What's your tradition? Is it Greek?
Partly Greek. I'm a bit complicated.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, exactly.
It's called being human.
Yes, exactly, Jo. But my parents were born in Egypt. My mum is Maltese French. My dad is Maltese Greek. And I was born in Box Hill in Melbourne. So
I love it.
Nothing very exotic from me, but yeah, the rest of the family can make some pretty big exotic claims.
And so they were raised with, so what kind of foods did you mainly eat growing up?
Well, growing up, we had a lot of Greek food and a lot of French food, but you know, these soups, casseroles, were very much part of my life, and fermented foods, look, I have to say I don't remember my family making any of those, but cooking from scratch was really very much, it came naturally, it came easily. When you've got that Greek blood, you're expected from a young age to be in the kitchen learning. You host big events. You get very good at feeding lots of people a lot of food.
I often think I should have been Greek or Italian.
Yeah, you're expert in doing the same thing.
Oh, that's how my family was, exactly the same. We have Hungarian, maybe that's sort of similar.
It's kind of a European thing.
Yeah, and German and American Indian.
Wow, that's another exotic mix too.
Yeah, but definitely when it's such a benefit to children if they are raised with traditional ways of cooking, and that's the sad thing, is our generation and the one after it, you know, our kids, a lot of them haven't learnt anything like that because mum's working, dad's working, everybody's busy, nobody has time to be in the kitchen cooking much. And they sort of come home and everyone's exhausted, grab dinner on the way home, you know, and it's sad, but I think we are coming back to a lot of our Western society is starting to realise the benefits of traditional cooking
And look,
trying to come back.
Maybe we can't, go the whole way back.
Yeah.
We've still got work, we've still got various things, but on the weekend we can cook,
Yep.
quiet. And at first, like most people who, have children who have extra needs, you're exhausted. You're exhausted and you don't feel like spending hours in the kitchen.
That's what frightens a lot of people who have children that are already very demanding because of allergies or, bad health or whatever. They're already finding life stressful. To think of doing gaps is a very scary thing.
It can be too much for some people. And I do agree. Like, we had to wait until we were ready and the whole family could be, you bring the whole family with you.
Yes, definitely.
Often the mum leads the way.
Yeah.
But I spent about a year researching gaps and trying to think about how we could do it, learning about it, cooking for myself and my partner in that way before we rolled it out to our family. Was it the same for you?
I had been listening, to talk about gaps, and I hadn't really looked into it completely. I knew vaguely what it was, but it wasn't until my son got sick, and then I talked to a couple of different friends, and they said, yep, you need to do gaps or paleo AIP or something to heal the gut. And I just jumped straight in, which is the way I do things.
Yeah, well, we were kind of fortunate in that Stevie Rose, our daughter, was quite young when we started GAP. She was 2 years old. So,
it makes it a little bit simpler.
Well, it does, because there's not the school, factors. There's not all these other things and outside influences. You're pretty much just you and your kids at home, and, you go out for outings and all the rest. And she already had a really whole food kind of palate. It's not like it was that much of a change. Yeah. So that was fortunate.
Yes.
But there was still a lot to learn. There was still heaps for me to get on top of. But we found that looking back, GAPS is so much easier, and all that cooking is so much easier than what we were dealing with through the night and all day long. Stevie was, I should probably give you a bit of background.
Give us the story. What happened?
Yeah. Well, Stevie was born by emergency cesarean section, and that was a life-saving, life-changing operation. So I'm very grateful that we were able to have that.
Yeah.
And what we found, though, is that my cesarean wound became very infected. I needed to be readmitted into hospital with 5 days of intravenous antibiotics and then 2 weeks of oral antibiotics. What? That was you too?
I didn't have cesareans, but I had retained placenta with 2 babies, and back in hospital, heaps of antibiotics pumped in.
Yeah. Which, I'm sure you'll agree. Thank you, antibiotics.
Yes.
Thank you, medical world. Then we just
have to deal with what happens next.
Exactly. And what did happen next, which I didn't know about, was that it affected Stevie. It affected me, obviously. But when you're a new mum, you don't even think about yourself, which, is something we can talk about later.
Yeah.
Anyway, my attention went directly to Stevie. I pretty much forgot about myself for now. But after that first breastfeed, after the intravenous antibiotics went in, Stevie just started screaming, and she just seemed to never stop. Her tongue was white, her poos were green, she was really unsettled, she seemed in pain. And we struggle on, as you do with a first baby, projectile vomits.
Oh, wow.
And I was a wreck. I was more and more exhausted. Things just didn't get better. And what I now realise I could have done is a lot of things I could have done at home to just help with my recovery from all those antibiotics.
So what did you do to help with the recovery?
Well, look, time went on and Stevie just seemed to not improve. She was, she definitely had some happy moments, but she never slept. She just never seemed to sleep. Her eyes were wide open. she was constipated, you know, from a very early age. She seemed in pain. I spent hours and hours and hours on a Fitball settling this little baby.
Wow.
Bouncing up and down, that seemed to help. But then by 11 months, we went with the protocol of, you know, when to introduce eggs into a baby's diet, and she got hives straight away. So, you know, we went straight to our GP who suspected an allergy. But of course, through this time, what were my foods? You know, there was lots of eggs, lots of nut-based foods, and a lot of tahini on roasted veggies and things for dinner. So when she was finally diagnosed, severe allergies to egg, nut, and sesame, I realised, oh, geez, that explains why she's probably had tummy aches
all this time.
Why she couldn't sleep, because that's part of severe allergy too. So anyway, she became 50% better. I took those things out of my breastfeeding diet, and wow, we had a different child. She was much, much better, and that was a bit of a hallelujah moment. But then she kind of, there was still about 50% that wasn't right. And she still, you know, still couldn't sleep, and still just seemed really unsettled. Constipation was still a big factor for her. And then I happened upon the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital diet. Do you know of that one? Okay, well, those researchers have identified that there are certain food chemicals that can bother our systems, naturally occurring food chemicals. So they're chemicals such as salicylates, amines, glutamates. So then, working with our local dietitian, we started to do a food diary, and she would be getting hives around her mouth if she had avocado, broccoli, miso soup, you know, lots of very healthy foods Stevie was reacting to. And while I could see physiological symptoms happening, like the hives around her mouth, I noticed that her behaviour was also affected. So this would often cause a lot of screaming and, just general upset, wakefulness. Take those foods out, and she was improved. But I don't know, have you ever looked into this for yourself?
My sister has been on that sort of diet, and when we first started with all the allergy type stuff, I bought the cookbook and used some of it. I didn't do it properly because it was more a dairy and gluten thing for me. But,
Sure. Well, you know, we found that we could see a distinct connection to the foods Stevie ate and her behaviours. And we took those foods out, and she would be infinitely calmer, happier, sleep better. But she never quite reached what they call baseline. She never quite seemed completely happy and settled. And plus, you know, it was driving me mad. It was like trying to hit a moving target. It's not sustainable for us. Guessing and, you know, all these great foods that all of a sudden, you know, how do you live? How do you do it?
And are you supposed to do that for your rest of your life? You know, that's the thing.
Well, where to from there? Once you know what those foods are that bother you, a lot of people are stuck with, well, this is it. But we realised, importantly, that you're not stuck with that. That just, you know, that just can highlight that there is some work to be done with the digestion, but we found with GAPS that can totally heal. And so anyway, at its worst, at about 14 months, Stevie really declined, and we saw new behaviours start to kick in. So she started bashing her head on the ground. You know, it wouldn't matter if it was cement on the pavement, and it was daily. And these meltdowns escalated. So, you know, it was like it would go for 40 minutes. You could almost time it, 40 minutes, and she could not be soothed. And then we would have sort of an hour's break, and then we'd roll into another meltdown about something. And It was about all
exhausting.
things. I was beside myself,
And how did she sleep at night?
She would wake up from a dead sleep, screaming like
my daughter did that too at 2 years old, and I could not understand. I knew nothing.
Yeah.
No one ever gave me any answers for that. It was so scary.
It's terrible. And you think,
cry.
you do, and you kind of, after you settle them, you lie in bed for the next 2 hours thinking,
what's wrong? What do I do?
I do to this little person.
Yeah.
Of course, probably like you, I presume that, okay, night terrors. Was that sort of you too? But then, night terror at 9 o'clock at night, 2 hours into sleep, then night terror again at 11 o'clock at night, then night terror at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
You were just thinking, hang on,
this is not normal.
Something is wrong. And the night terrors went on and on and on. It wasn't just a phase. Couple that with during the day, couple that with, Mummy, I can't, not the seatbelt, it's too tight, not these clothes, I can't stand, there was one dress she could wear. No, the plates, I need the chicken on the pink plate, I need the beans on the green plate, I can't touch. I only want to watch Dirt Girl, one show.
Yeah.
We just stopped going out, basically.
Yeah.
It was just, I was too exhausted. It was too much for her.
Yeah.
It was just too much for her.
Did she have any diagnosis like, Asperger's, autism, anything like that, or no?
No, but of course I was thinking, what is this? This is, I didn't know anything about autism.
Yeah.
But little by little, I started to hear that night screaming is part of autism. Just many people, it is just, that's what it comes with. And, this particular nature of the food and, the sensorial challenges that these children and these people face, I started, and the head banging.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
It's like, whoa. I thought head banging and autism would be something like a person would just line themselves up against a wall and then repeatedly bang their heads. I saw what Stevie was doing. She would just throw her head back once and it wouldn't matter. It's like she didn't feel it.
Yeah.
But
oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it was really, really horrible. But I have to say it was the most frightening and horrible experience I've ever known in my entire life.
Yeah.
So of course I start ringing up autism hotlines. I was encouraged to get a diagnosis for Stevie, but I'd also heard that, being 2 years old, because she could walk, she could talk, she had all of her motor skills, everything else was firing off
and
well.
Eye contact was all.
Yeah, she had eye contact. She's also really loving, and but she had started saying, "Don't look at me, don't talk to me," and particularly to her dad. She was all right with me, and and sometimes I've heard that autistic people will kind of prefer one parent to another. And at its worst, she was just vaguing out. I remember being at the beach with her and she was just gone. And I was saying to her, Stevie, calling out to her like this. And I just couldn't reach her. And this was happening more and more frequently, which, again, another parent has described these as sometimes being, they can be mini seizures.
Oh.
So look, what do we know about this case? It's a mother's observations.
Yeah.
We take her to get diagnosed because she was 2 years old, and I'd heard that they don't diagnose until a child is 3. So in the meantime, I'd been watching Four Corners. I just happened to flick on Four Corners, and I saw this program. Kerry O'Brien introduced a program called the Autism Enigma, where it described a mother who had identified a gut problem with her son. And this son had an overgrowth of Clostridia. And she just basically started ringing around and got some experts together and happened to convince a top biologist to start to work with her on identifying how to manage the Clostridia.
Yeah.
And they were able to use antibiotics to kill off the Clostridia. And she's got footage of this child who was toe walking, who couldn't be toilet trained, who was non-verbal, no eye contact too.
Wow.
Once the antibiotics kicked in, the Clostridia was brought back into line. This child could be toilet trained. It was a completely different person. And so I started to think, what is going on with the gut? What is this business that the gut is responsible for? And meanwhile, I'd heard, 80% of the immune system is found in the gut wall.
Yeah.
And that was crucial for me. I did not know that before. My pediatric allergist, while he was thorough, did a fantastic job, did not tell me that.
Yeah.
But that's something I needed to know to start to begin to do my own research. And I've got a background in journalism. I've been a journalist for 14 years.
Okay.
So research came easily to me. And I kind of did what that mum did from the autism enigma. I just started ringing people and interviewing people and doing what you're doing now with your podcast, just, whether it be parents or I spoke to a biologist, I spoke to GPs, I spoke to, all manner of specialists, and started asking them for the sake of Stevie, but, also for the sake of anyone who might need to know stuff.
Yeah.
So then basically it led us to GAPS because, frankly, there was nothing else.
Yeah.
Exhausted everything. And I remember falling into my husband basically and saying, I don't know how else to help her. I've tried everything, James. We're at the end of the road.
Yeah.
I think she's autistic. I think we need to go in and get help for her because I just don't know how to parent her in a way that, she needs. And basically a friend had said, have you heard of GAPS? And, and I looked at it and it seemed pretty meaty and it, it had eggs, full of eggs and full of nuts. And so I thought, well, we can't do that. And it's high in glutamates and Stevie Rose is really sensitive to all these histamines. I remember trying to give her a drop of sauerkraut water and she just, the meltdowns just escalated like I'd never seen. So I just thought, we can't do this. It's just, we don't even know, which is why, I was talking about, I researched it for a year.
So it would be such a difficult thing, thinking, how in the world could you do it?
How do we do it? I kept hearing about all these amazing healing stories from other mothers, and particularly one she'd done GAPS for 2 years and the child lost his peanut allergy. And it was just a freedom that I would have loved to have given Stevie if possible. And so basically at this point you give Stevie green beans to eat, and green beans were in the potty. She was, she just wasn't digesting. And we just didn't know what else to do. We went through three pediatricians, all sorts of complementary therapies. We just tried, we tried whatever we could, but GAPS ended up being the thing that just took her to where she is today. Basically,
and where is she now? What's she like?
She is the most healthy, vibrant, gorgeous little girl. I mean, she was always a gorgeous girl, and she was always very loved. But she had challenges, and now she eats eggs. She's no longer allergic to eggs. She's had 2 tests for sesame, and she's negative to that. And when we started, we tested her for her peanut allergy at 11 months initially. She was right up there, close to 10 millimeters, which is when they say, right, you've got to have an EpiPen. Now, like a year ago, you only test annually for allergies. A year ago, she was 2 millimeters for peanut allergy. So, you know, we are just really can't help but think, thank you, GAPS.
Yeah. So how did you start with all these things that she couldn't have? I did interview Mary Kelly the other day, and her story is kind of similar with all the gigantic amounts of allergies and probably even more.
Totally.
And starting with one drop of broth in the formula and building it up. That was amazing.
Yeah, and it's similar, but first things first, the most important thing I tell anyone who wants to hear this is, please, with severe allergies, only test with your pediatric allergist.
Yeah.
Risk test is different. That's Natasha is talking about something completely different.
Actually, someone did ask about that, I think, on my page. So if you could explain that, because a lot of people won't even know what you mean about risk test.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, in the GAPS protocol, Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride talks about if you've got a sensitivity to a certain food, then you can put a little bit of that food on your wrist and just check it out. Leave it sometimes overnight and check it out in the morning. If you've got any kind of reaction to it, it can be an indication of how you'll cope with it digestively.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm saying is, she's talking about an intolerance.
Yeah, not an allergy.
A severe allergy. She uses the words allergy, but she's not talking about anaphylaxis. So if you've been diagnosed with anaphylaxis, often you can be touch allergic. Sometimes you can, just having a cracked egg in your kitchen can set you off, or peanuts in a plane, those sorts of things. Just breathed in, cause anaphylaxis. So please, this is not what we're talking about.
No.
Only do testing with under the instruction of your pediatric allergist or your allergist. So how did we start? We got a healthcare team together, and Marika Rodenstein is someone from the nutrition practice that we used, and I liked her because she's a dietitian and she's a nutritionist, but she's also GAPS certified.
Okay.
And she was just across all of the information that I needed to be across. We weren't starting from scratch with, what's this and what's that. And that just took my stress levels down enormously. And, stress in these situations are high, and you kind of start to get used to it, don't you?
Yeah. Thankfully we haven't been in quite the same boat, but I can imagine that it would be almost like a new norm. You're so used to it.
Absolutely. And, when you're carrying around EpiPens, you're basically getting ready to save someone's life at any moment.
Yeah.
And that stress, it just has to be factored in as a norm.
Yeah.
But I have read that that parents of allergic children have the same stress levels as those who AMBOs and those types of people, emergency response teams. So, look, stress levels are something to really start to think about and try and manage if you can. And when you get time, often it's just, you just got to do what's in front of you, which is look after your children. And, so I got Marika, that helped me. We then basically entered into GAPS by going very, very slowly. And we got some of the gelatin. We got Great Lakes gelatin. That's what I knew to use. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't know, that just seemed to be what everyone else was using. And we fed it to our daughter on a teaspoon, like a quarter of it at a time, a quarter of a teaspoon.
Just the powder?
Just the powder. Now, we use the hydrolyzed, this green canister, which I don't actually think is GAPS approved.
Okay.
It's the red one that's, I think, it's okay. It gets the tick. But the green one, I'd heard it was just lower in amines, which was something we knew that Stevie Rose couldn't handle. So, the broths and all those things were high in histamine. But what I started doing was using the foods that she could tolerate. So, she could have green beans, she could have chives, she could have chicken, she could have some of these low salicylate, low amine foods, and I would cook them up in a soup using all, spring onions, anything that you can tolerate.
Yeah.
And then we would broil the chicken, put it in, quickly cook it and blend it up, and off we went. And that's what she had initially. And I would get bones from the butcher, get them sawn open, and give her a little bit of fried marrow by the teaspoon. We got a really good probiotic suitable for her. We did a stool test analysis, understood where her gut microbes were and how they were placed in terms of their balance and if there was too much of one or the other. And we started off on the head of a pin of baby biotic.
Wow.
Yeah, and even then she reacted.
So where do you got that through your dietitian lady, the baby biotic?
Through a naturopath.
Okay.
Need a prescription for that one.
Okay.
So that was through a naturopath. And anyway, so we went slowly. Yep. And gradually, sometimes we'd miss 2 days of the baby biotic, but then she just seemed to, her sleep seemed to improve. And I remember looking at James thinking, do you reckon it's that gelatin? We're kind of incredulous, which it would be,
Yeah, of course. How could something so simple help?
Yeah, like what? But we had, at this point, Stevie was eating the family meal, and this was grains, this was everything, but all cooked at home. But I would cook a thing of porridge, soaked, sprouted, traditionally prepared, blah, blah, blah. And she would just eat the whole pot and still say, I want more, I want more.
Wow.
She had this insatiable appetite.
This is something you always hear, isn't it? At first they don't have that and then it kicks in.
Well, this was before GAPS.
And I see.
I know that happened as well with GAPS, but she had it for different foods.
Okay.
It definitely kicked in, and it was stuff like lamb shanks.
Yes.
And, that was just like, I could imagine that food just sticking to her bones. It just really sated her.
Yeah.
And, that was how we started, very slowly, very gradually. And she just seemed to, I saw online that you're now tolerating a bit of butter.
Yay.
So
congratulations. And anyone who's followed my podcasts for all this time will know that only a few months ago I was saying, I can't handle ghee yet. I'm so upset. I want ghee.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited. Yay.
We want ghee, and we how fabulous when we can have ghee.
Yeah.
And the same with Stevie. We were lucky she could have ghee.
Oh, that's
and good. There's a number of fats that she could have, and she loved butter and avocado. And I remember her saying, Mummy, I want butter, avocado. 1, 2.
Oh.
Yeah. So she got it. And
I could pretty much live on those two as well.
Yeah.
And what kind? Can I just ask what kind of butter?
Well, I was like you. We were discussing offline. You're gonna start making yours.
Yeah, I mean, I have made it plenty of times, but I've never made cultured butter.
Yeah, well, that's what I did.
Yeah.
I first made my own butter, just made it from scratch, and I made my own ghee. I basically I went by the book. You just make it. Now I don't. Now I just source whatever I can.
You're far enough along, you can.
We are so far. We're finished. We've finished GAPS, and Stevie takes sandwiches to Kinder and full deal.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. This is a child who we gave her drops of food. That's what I'm coming back to with your ghee. The way we started, I realised, was best for Stevie is, if you give someone a whack of food, often it can be just too much for the system. It's like a big, all those nutrients just flood the body, and it can just cause too much to happen, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is my most unscientific explanation, but this is what I observed. And so we found that if you just drop by drop, and the avocado was just a tiny, quarter of a teaspoon, just little taste.
I remember reading about that and thinking, that frustrates me. I just want to get into it.
And
I'm so impatient.
It's yummy, and you just want to eat, and come on.
Yeah.
But because she was young, we were able to just, sometimes I would even disguise it in another food so that, she wouldn't have the misery of me saying, well, you can't have any more than a quarter of a teaspoon.
Yeah.
But that's how we did. And it's like you kind of build it up, and you're training the body to familiarize with this food again and giving it space to detox if it needs to. I think that's how it went for her. I mean, this is aside from the severe allergies, because that's a different matter. But having said that, that's once you're at a point where you realize, okay, this child is ready to start challenging egg, for example. Yeah. What you do is you cook one egg in a cake for 40 minutes, make sure it's really cooked, and then you just have a try, you put it on your lip, and then you see how you go, and then you have a taste, and then you see how you go. Yeah. It's a similar procedure. So that's what we did, and that's what we did with all of those foods, the avocado, the broccoli, and we just found she could tolerate it and no hives, and behavior was steady. Bananas were one of those last bastions. I was thinking, when can she have bananas?
Oh, really?
Coconut was another one. But she's done it, and we just slowly built up, and that child has 2 bananas a day.
Yeah.
Pancakes, you name it.
Oh, that's so good.
So, basically we did our 2 years and we gradually came off it, and now we sort of, we still cook from scratch. We're still mindful about what she eats, but I don't have to think about it, I don't have to think about it anywhere near as much.
So when you say bread, what kind of bread do you usually have as a family?
We have a beautiful baker down here, and he makes sourdough bread. He uses organic flour, and I found this is, Stevie's gift to us as well. If I eat bread with some sauerkraut beforehand, or sauerkraut with it, or anything cultured, I find I can tolerate it fine.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. It's always been one of those things. Sorry?
My kids are going to be so happy to hear that.
Yeah. Well, look, there are, I think there are many roads to healing. Yeah. Having had this experience, there are many roads to healing. Josephine, our second, she's never been that severe, but she does seem to have some digestive issues. She's got the eczema, she's got the rattly chest, she's got different things going on. Yeah. But we don't feel like she needs to do GAPS at this point. She's eaten all the GAPS food, and she has sauerkraut, and, she has kefir smoothies in the morning, and we love these foods. That's, we eat this way because we actually love these foods.
Yeah.
They're traditional foods, they're beautiful foods, they're foods that love us back. But I think for anyone listening, GAPS is one way. It was a great way for us, but I do think there will be many ways. I just don't know about them yet.
Yeah. It's all comes back to having a healthy gut, though, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, more and more we are realising the very impact that our gut microbiome is making on our entire body. There are so many systems we're now realising relies on gut microbiome. And Natasha, this is as many people would know, this is a neurologist and neurosurgeon who became a nutritionist after her son was diagnosed with autism, her non-verbal son. And now he's verbal. He's at university. Well, he was at university last time I checked
that's what I heard. Yeah.
And he's very well, happy boy. Yeah. So she's someone, that book's been around for 20 years. She is someone who's been talking about the gut and microbiome for all this time. Now it's the new sexy thing in science.
Yeah. Which is funny, isn't it? I know 10 or 11 years ago when I first started seeing a naturopath to get help with my issues, he explained to me all the, what food was doing to my gut, and drew the little pictures of the villi and showed me what it's like when they're damaged, and told me how, about leaky gut, and drew little diagrams for me. And it just it took so many years for me to really take that all in and understand it. And I think that's the same with everyone. We haven't grown up learning about this stuff. It's new to us, and it's like, what? I don't quite get it.
Yes, but that's so interesting. But what we have grown up with that our children possibly are not going to grow up with are, grandma's chicken soups.
Yeah.
A home cooked.
I grew up with that, thankfully.
Yeah, well, me too. But, what about meat and 3 veg? What about Sunday roast? Yeah. This is all gaps, you know. You can call it paleo, you can call it whatever you like.
Whatever.
It was tradition. Yeah. It was 50 years ago. Yeah. And, this stuff, what was happening then, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah.
And I say bring back those chops.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
So yeah, I do really think that our gut microbiome is, it's just it's at the forefront of everything that we may now start to understand when it comes to our health. I look in Nature Journal, one of the most prestigious scientific magazines, heaps on gut microbiome. Yeah. Rob Knight, have a listen. Have you heard any of his TED Talks? There's a great TED Talk explaining gut microbiome and what they're starting to discover. You can do all sorts of TED Talks now. Basically use the internet to zap into a university lecture and get that quality research and information. You can be your own journalist and be discerning about the information. And
definitely.
For me, I read, researched, thought about it, and I made up my own mind.
Yeah.
And that's just, I think, when it comes to your own health and the health of your children, we really do need to do some thinking, do some reading, knowing, I think, that the medical world's on our side. Mm-hmm. But it is up to you. It is up to the individual too.
Yeah, definitely. So when you came to, why did you decide to do your cookbook? Can you just explain a bit about that?
Yeah. Well, probably like you, there are lots of people going, well, what can you eat?
Yeah. What do you eat? Cardboard?
Can you have that? Can you have that? Can you have that? No. Okay, so, and then we'd turn up to family functions and I'd feel really sad because, you can't have that birthday cake, Steve, because it's got egg in it and it's got this and it's got, stuff that she was allergic to. So fair enough. Yeah. I had to then go and learn how to cook a cake without eggs and I didn't know how to do any of that.
Yeah, it wasn't traditional food.
It wasn't traditional. Plus I couldn't bake a cake anyway. I could always slap together a nice dinner, but baking and sciencey types of things, just something I hadn't done. Yeah. So I had to learn how to do all that, and then I wanted to be able to kids who are allergic. I wanted them to be able to have a cake at a party where everybody was going to say, "Oh, great, yum!" Not even think about it.
Exactly.
Or go to one of our fat Greek, events, and just put down something that I knew that all my family would go yum.
Yes.
So anyway, we were doing this at home, and I started up Mama Care, which was really to support families who had, severe allergies, and I was finding, wow, we've made a custard without eggs. How do we do that? So. I photographed it and, I never took photographs before.
Yeah.
And all those photographs you see in that book, they're literally a few seconds before my kids ate the food. Yeah, I took them with my iPhone.
Oh, yeah. iPhones are great. That's what I use.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so anyway, we just started to realise that there's heaps of foods you can eat that don't have eggs, don't have nuts, don't have sesame, blah, blah, blah. And then as time progressed, we could have nuts and we could have eggs, so I incorporated those as well, but being mindful that, some people like you, they can't have dairy right now, so what else can you substitute easily? And often, if you can't have butter in a biscuit, coconut oil just is great. It's a great sub, and it's just a great help to feel like, I can do it.
Yeah.
And more than anything, I was exhausted. I was doing a lot of cooking, like a lot of people who are listening to you now are. And I wanted a book that I could hand to my relatives and say, please help me. Can you please just cook me a chicken stock? Can you please just make us a cake? Or can you make this chicken casserole?
Yeah.
And, you know, my family wanted to help, but they didn't know how.
And also you find when people invite you over, they want to invite you over for dinner, but they don't know what to make, and so they're scared to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I didn't want to feel like the dork with the weird food either. And this, you know, this book, you'll as you'll see, you turn the pages, that's not weird food. That's beautiful food. And anyone, that's accessible to anyone. And that's the other thing about this book. It was just a discovery of home cooking, and you don't have to be doing GAPS to enjoy this book. You know, it is. I call myself now a foundational food advocate. It's just foundational food. It's it's the basis of a lot of traditions, and it can be the basis for your health.
Yep. And you can add in whatever else you can have, obviously.
Whatever else, and I add everything else in it too now. Like you know,
now
like
you can.
Sourdough. I have my sauerkraut with it on the side. Today, you know, the whole family had a brekkie. We had sourdough toast with an egg on top, sauerkraut on the side, bit of goat's cheese, avocado.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I do get this question a lot from people, and I'd love to hear your take on it. How you do, when you were doing GAPS, if you can think back, how you did tackle important events like weddings and parties, when you were on the early stages. You were saying you pretty much made things that your family could eat, and took them along.
Basically, and you know, I was someone who felt really nervous about that. I was a bit shy, and in the end, because we had severe allergies, most people
understood,
and most people in our boat also just know that you have to make it yourself, so that it's easy to make mistakes. Even the most well-meaning person can just put an allergen in there accidentally, not realizing.
Of course.
So I was just used to making enough for everyone else, and I would have people to us. You know, if there was an event, a family event particularly, I'd say, can we have it at our house, and I'll cook. And then as time went on, I would say, Mum, can you make the XYZ? And then I would start to get, you know, family members who love us and love the kids. I'd give them a recipe from my blog, and they would make it, and we'd share it together. But, you know, those initial stages of, you know, intro phases 1, 2, 3, we spent a lot of time at home. You know,
and that's what I found. We didn't start intro until I knew we'd be home at least a month, and no weddings, no parties, no camps, no whatever.
Yeah. And when Stevie had a birthday, I remember she was doing phase 2 or something. But, you know, we did break that intro phase for that occasion just slightly, where I made panna cottas with some berries on top. I made a jelly cake, made out of herbal teas, and I put a heap of blueberries, strawberries and things in the middle of it. I made like a bunt shape. And gorgeous. You know, she was turning 3, so she thought that was great, and all the other kids thought it was great too. You know, you'd be surprised.
Well, what kids don't like jelly?
What kids don't like jelly? Raw honey can solve a lot of problems.
Yes.
And I think, if you can manage it, and some kids just aren't there, but we're at a point where we could just do a few berries, and, you know, she just didn't miss out on that time.
That's good.
And then other occasions like weddings, I actually can't even remember, but I would suspect that in those early phases, I just would have said, we're going to stay home. And
at least with a wedding, if you've got little kids, you probably might not go to the reception anyway.
And we did a lot of thermoses. You know, we always packed our food. And at first I remember feeling, because I was such a Melbourne cafe girl, I'm now a little country town now, so it's been, but you know, at first I was feeling really sad that I can't go to cafes with my kids. I have to cook everything myself. Oh my gosh, this is pretty full on. But I've spent a lot of time in India and Indonesia and all sorts of places, third world types of areas. And I thought, you know what? How many millions of people actually take a tiffin or a something with them wherever they go? It's an absolute privilege to be able to, look at a menu and go, what do I feel like today? And it's a privilege that I appreciate, I love, I now have it back. But I also thought, Nicole, there are worse problems in the world. We're going to fall in love with cooking at home and eating at home and being pretty down to earth, simple people.
One thing that I've really noticed, both with myself and the kids, is appreciating the really simple foods now. And I was just reading a book recently about a lady who decided to sort of rebel against the excess in our Western society. And she decided to really simplify her life in 7 different areas, and one of them was in food. That was the first area she tackled. And so she decided to go back, to look at other cultures, third world cultures, where they don't have hardly anything to eat. And basically she ate like them for a month. And she ate, like sweet potato, chicken, spinach, really 7 basic foods. And she said, it gives you such an appreciation for, she became much healthier. She also saved money. She found that she started to appreciate the flavour of real food, which she hadn't before because she always smothered everything in sauces.
Yes.
And just realising, what, there's a lot of people that eat not even that good.
Yeah.
And we complain about gaps. I mean, for goodness sakes, there's heaps you can eat.
There's an abundance in gaps.
Yeah.
But I really like that point, Jo. Just the appreciation and gratitude were things that, the diet is one thing. When it comes to healing, I realised gaps, it took us 90% of the way, I would say.
Yeah.
But there was this other 10%. And I do, looking back and also moving forward, I do realise that part of it and why GAPS worked for Stevie, I think is because we were able to really start to change our perceptions. We talk about our gut microbiome, but I reckon there's a microbiome of the home as well. There's this, like we were talking about stress before, how stressful it is to have a child that has extra needs, and what it does to you, when you've dealt with them in the middle of the night and all that's, the night terrors and how terrified you are.
And lack of sleep.
The exhaustion, you've had the baby, you've done the cesarean, you've dealt with infection, many of us have this story. And, and parenting, full stop, even if it goes,
even if it's perfect.
If it goes straight down the line and it's all straightforward, it is tiring. But I've now had to really look at my own recovery and my own stress management and stress levels. And I think what happened when we simplified our life like that woman did, like you're doing, like we did, you start gardening and you start just chopping the veggies and stirring the pot and you don't go out as much. There's just something that happens in the home that is good for you and good for your kids.
It changes the way you think and you start to think about, well, what really is important?
Exactly. Your perspective really shifts. And then when Stevie started to get better, it was like we cycled into each other, when I could see her improve and she started to sleep, then we started to sleep. Then I wasn't so exhausted. And so then I wasn't so stressed. And then she didn't feel my stress. And then she stopped kind of having meltdowns in the day. And every time she could have just that tiny bit of avocado, like I made sure that I did a big kind of gratitude moment. And there's something in that. I can't explain it,
So
but
true.
there was something in that for us, in that, wow, okay, thank you for this beautiful food.
Yeah.
And traditionally, we're talking about 50 years ago, what people were doing, and one of the things that they would do is they would pray. They'd say grace over their food, and
we
I've
still do.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, some people still do. I don't. I never got into that. But what I do now is I try to say thank you. I do a bit of what we call thank you ritual. And I say to the girls, who wants to say thanks for this meal this time? And we take it in turns. And we basically look at the plate and, it sounds a bit basic, but we say, thank you, chicken. Thank you, avocado. Thank you, thank you, sky. Thank you, rain. Thank you, earth. Thank you, elements, for providing all of this for us. This food is perfect for us and for our bodies. And there's just something about once you've had to deal with, oh my God, this food can kill you, this egg can kill you, you kind of have to retrain yourself and start to say this food is perfect. Obviously only when it is. No amount of praying and
thanking it, Macca's burger.
Yeah, when you're severely allergic to it. But yeah, there's something about every bit of healing that Stevie experienced, I was grateful for. And you notice all those wins. Try to notice all those wins. And the other thing that I think was key was to start to, you can keep a wellness diary or a happiness diary. Or even if it's just a spoken diary, spoken word diary. At night we'd get into bed and I'd lie between the girls and I'd say, how'd your day go? What was the best thing that happened to you today? And a lot of people do this, and I think it's just such a worthwhile exercise when it comes to your digestive health. You wouldn't get connected, but I believe it is.
Definitely. Stress is a really big thing with digestive health.
Stress and cortisol levels do affect digestive health.
Yeah. And also sleep patterns. And so, when you're calming down, settling down at night, having that lovely time together with the lights off, kids open up. The kids just really seem to open up. Once the lights go off, there's that little window where you can often peek into their souls, I find.
Yeah.
Even teenagers, my 16, 18-year-olds are the same. At night, it's almost like they're not as shy to talk to you if the lights are off.
Yeah, sure.
And it's a beautiful time to open up to each other.
Absolutely. And initially, God, bedtime was such a nightmare for us, and it would take Stevie an hour, an hour to just, she just couldn't, she'd say, Mummy, I can't close my eyes,
Oh, darling.
Yeah, but now, and it was gradual, but there's something about that. It did feel like a real kind of hike, but we got there and we tried to just, if you can look out at those vistas every now and then and really appreciate where you are. And at the time, I didn't know what Stevie was teaching us. I didn't realize that, man, this kid's a genius. Look at her. Look at what she's teaching our family. How to empower themselves at home. How to be traditional. How to have longevity in your homes. What she's given to James and I. How to look at our garden and see the herbs in there. And I started to learn all about herbal medicine and what various herbs can do, what they contribute to your lives, even just chopping up an onion or that, you'll see the apples on the front cover of my book. Just, wow, look at nature. It is
look at the little star inside.
Quite miraculous. Yeah, it's very beautiful. So, the other thing that came up for us were these foot baths.
Yes.
And, again, for me, just starting to settle into she's going to be all right. This is in hand, and we're just going to do this and deal with stuff as it comes up. And part of her being able to sleep was we started to give her these magnesium foot baths, magnesium flakes. We just do, we started off with a quarter of a cup, and we'd get a bucket, and the girls would have a bucket each, and they'd put their feet in there, just watch telly and whatever. And I started to put my feet in there too. And wow, everybody started sleeping so much better.
Wow.
Through the night type of stuff, which is, from where we came from.
That was amazing.
It's amazing. It's so life-changing. Me going to bed early when I can.
Yeah.
It helps a lot. And, initially when Stevie was really unwell, I'd heard, people say, well, can you try meditation? I spent 2 decades meditating. That's not a problem, but I could not find time to do anything for myself during those initial years of Stevie's life. And I felt like, you feel like killing someone when they say, can you just meditate?
Because you're just,
you realize what I'm dealing with, do you realize I'm lucky if I can eat dinner. I'm lucky if I can go to the toilet. So I think meditation is amazing. But there's also something about a lot in just your best is good enough. And what you can do right there for yourself and your children is fantastic. Everyone, no matter whether they're doing gaps or, anything else, most parents are doing their absolute best.
Yeah, that's right. And we just learn as we go.
Absolutely. Just kind of accepting that it's good enough.
Yeah. Well, we might finish up there because I think we've gone about an hour, and thank you so much. But I think we'll have a second podcast with Nicole because she still has a lot more we were going to talk about, right, Nicole?
Oh God, I could yabber on for.
We'll try to fit it all into one more.
Thank you so much, Jo. It was wonderful talking to you.
No,
thanks everyone.
Thank you for all the time you took for us. And if anyone would like to know more about Nicole, can you just share your websites and Facebook and all that kind of thing for everyone?
Sure. Thanks, Jo. The website is mamacare.com, so it's www.MUMMACARE, and you can click on a link if you want to have a look at the Alchemy Cookbook, or find me on Facebook under Mama Care and Instagram. Love to have you along.
And the Alchemy Cookbook, where can they get that from? Just through your site?
Through my site, or they can purchase it via Amazon. If you search online, there's a few places that are selling it, but also locally, if you're Victorian, there's the bookshop Organic Larder, and I'll be listing various bookshops as I go along on my website.
Well, I'll put a couple of links under this podcast on the Wellness Couch. So if you're having a look at the Wellness Couch page, you'll be able to click on the links there.
Right.
Yeah, and if you have any questions for Nicole, pop over to her Facebook page and ask. I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them.
Absolutely.
And we hope you'll check out some more of A Quirky Journey podcast. There's lots more. We're up to about 30-something now. 30-something, that's pretty good. And the website is www.thewellnesscouch.com/A Quirky Journey. And we'd love you to subscribe on iTunes. So have a look and be inspired. And if you have questions that you would like answered on a podcast, please let me know on my Facebook page. That would be great. Quirky Cooking, not A Quirky Cooking. And just keep working on those small changes. Like Nicole said, you just do what you can and you learn as you go. All right, we'll be back to share more of our journeys with you next week. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.